All right. Wow. What's up, everybody's? Happy afternoon on this Thursday. COVID-19 watch. Crazy, crazy times. And on this fine afternoon, I'm excited to welcome to my class and share with my students and with all of you who've joined us today, the amazing and incredibly funny and witty and brilliant Gloria Bigelow. Welcome, Gloria.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me, Mr.
Yes.
Russell.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah.
Um, so what the people watching on YouTube don't know is that we actually start this call a little bit earlier than the start time on YouTube, and to
hmm
give the students a chance to say hello and introduce themselves. We have about 16 people in the chat
hmm
on Zoom who are part of my actual class,
hmm
just giving them opportunity to say hello. There are a lot of faces here that you can't see because they're not on video. I say that because in case you hear an additional voice that's not on the screen, it
hmm
might be one of them.
Yeah.
So here's the format in like, a quick 30 seconds. We're saying hello, hello, hello. And then for a couple minutes, Glow, we're going to have you introduce who you are and what you do in the world. And then we're going to tie us all together by asking you, how has this pandemic affected you
Uh-huh.
and the work that you're doing? After that intro, I'm
hmm
going to kill my mic and turn it over to you, and you're going to teach us a thing. Tell us something that you feel like we should know to help us grow and keep this semester moving forward for us and progressing, all of these young people's lives, basically. So
hmm
much pressure, right? On Zoom. And then after, we'll open the mics. We'll give the students a chance to engage with you. We'll see how it goes from there.
Okay.
Yeah. First of all, thank you though so much for just joining us today. I know even though you're in quarantine, like
hmm
the rest of all of us, the whole planet is on the sick and shut in list right now. You are still incredibly busy with the work that you're doing, all the writing that you're doing, and the show that you're going to hopefully tell us more about in the talk. But I just want to say again, thank you, thank you, thank you, because you constantly stay on the go. You're constantly busy, and I just can't say thank you enough for your gracious time.
Oh, thank you, Teresa. I'm really happy to be here. I love, as you know, I love teaching and being with students, and particularly being with artists. And artists of color is really exciting to me. So yeah, it's a joy to be here.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Um, the last time I saw you in person, you were performing here in Houston.
I
You were doing
know.
a fantastic, fantastic set in a comedy show that was here in town. Michelle
Yeah.
and I came out to see you. I got a chance to meet your mom,
hmm
and y'all, if you want a glimpse of Glow's brilliance, find any of her comedy routines on YouTube. There are some shows that are included in the digital flyer that you can also look up, and just see this amazing woman's work. So Glow, tell us who you are and what you do in the world.
So it's really interesting listening to your students introduce themselves and talk about like what they're majoring in and studying in, because I was in a similar position. I started off as a theater major at Spelman College in Atlanta, and I'm a like big like show tunes queen and all of that stuff, and I loved performing. And then after that, I got a job, which is crazy. I got a job as a theater major coming out of college, and I worked for Kaiser Permanente in their educational theater department. I know. Right. Who knew? Who knew? I didn't even know it was a thing. But we would
Right.
travel around to these different schools and teach conflict resolution and HIV/AIDS awareness to kids using theater as a vehicle to get the conversation started. And I did that for a minute and then moved on back to Baltimore. And when I moved back to Baltimore, I knew that I wanted to continue my education. I feel like I got some really great fundamentals at Spelman, particularly in like Black theater. And that was something that I had no knowledge about, because that wasn't something that was a part of my education before Spelman. But I also felt like there were some things that I was fundamentally missing. And so I wanted to go to graduate school, and I went through ERTA. Do you guys know what ERTA is? So ERTA is this thing, you go and you audition for all of these schools. And I got into a lot of programs, and I was trying to decide where I wanted to go. And I ultimately decided that I had I'm the kind of person that makes a list. So I had this criteria. I was like, I don't want to pay for my education. I want to go and get my master's for free.
Yeah.
I want something that is nurturing, not competitive, that had voice, movement, all this thing. So I ended up at the University of Illinois, and I got my Master's of Fine Arts in acting, and then came out and moved to New York and decided that I didn't like auditioning, which is like ridiculous for an actor. Like that's literally the job. Like like the icing is
the job isn't acting. The job is auditioning.
The job is auditioning. So how you going to be an actor and you're not going to audition? So, but before I went to grad school for acting, I really debated about whether or not I wanted to go for directing or for acting. And I was up and down and up and down. And I was like, acting is such a big part of who you are. Just go for acting. So I came out and I was like, well, since I don't want to audition, I don't like it, I'm going to move towards directing, which was another love. I'd done it in college. I did it in graduate school. And I really loved that part of exercising that part of my brain as well. The part of my brain that's super collaborative, and the part of my brain that likes big ideas and all of that kind of stuff. So I started directing in New York, and working with like NYU's new playwrights and their writers, and just for new work. And then I was a part of Lincoln Center's Directors Lab, which was like 2 weeks of just incredible stimulation artistically, and loved that. But when I first moved there, in a really random situation, I was out one night and I was trying to impress somebody, and I was telling jokes, and they said to me, like, have you ever done stand-up? And I was like, no, I'm a classically trained actor. Thank you very much. Like I do Shakespeare or Moliere. I'm very self-serious.
Yeah.
And she was like, well, it's just something I think you should think about, because you seem to have an opinion on everything, and just think about it. And I was like, well, I don't even know where to begin in that world and stand up. She's like, well, just write about the stuff that annoys you. Well, plenty of that. So I was temping, so I had a lot of free time. So I was just writing, and I read her what I wrote, and she said, I think you're a comic. I think you may be a stand-up. And I always knew that I loved to write, but I didn't really know how that fit in with me as an actor. Like I didn't see myself as like a performance artist, like painting stuff, and doing things. I didn't see myself that way. So I was in New York for a couple years, and I tried stand-up. A lot of the material was material that I'd written as, being a temp 2 years before, and something clicked.
Yeah.
And it became very easy. My path became easy. So like, the guy that was the manager of a club, a guy named Morty, there's always
There's always a Morty at a comedy club.
There's always a Morty at a comedy club.
Yeah.
And he said to me, I think you have something. I want to help you. And he said that I can go to this like class thing for free and just learn more about stand-up.
Yeah.
And that's when I learned.
When were you in New York? When were you in New York doing stand-up?
So I moved to New York after grad school in 2003. I started stand-up in 2006.
Okay. Yeah, I stand-up paid for my last year of undergrad for me. And I think we ended up in a lot of the same places, but I traversed those paths a little bit earlier. Because I started stand-up. I was doing stand-up when Wanda Sykes was starting out, and we were doing a lot of the same clubs when she was Wanda Sykes Hall. And I remember doing a comedy concert in Baltimore with her and Monique.
What?
And there was this one woman who was, all she did was scream. She was just yelling at everyone. And that was her comedy. That was her go-to.
Yeah.
And I suppose it worked for her. She, she did really well for a good while, but um, I had anxiety when it came to auditioning,
Yeah.
because I'm dyslexic. Cold readings just were just awful. So I turned to stand up because it gave me full control over the narrative. Um, and yeah, so yeah, I would have loved to have been cutting my teeth around the same time you were cutting it,
Yeah.
because I watch you, and I mean, just sitting in the kitchen sometimes talking, when I lived in LA there, I would just be in stitches, and you just sitting there just having a conversation. You
Yeah.
just talking. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that what you were saying is like a lot of that is why I ended up in stand up. It's because I didn't like auditioning. What I didn't like is feeling powerless. I didn't
Yeah.
like feeling like I didn't have or I had to look a certain way. I had to be a certain way. I didn't like all of that stuff. So
Yeah.
stand up was the perfect way for me to have control over what I talk about and who just to have my own voice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so Morty helped me out and I started getting time at the Improv in New York. And then my first kind of like, important or significant kind of thing is when I was a part of something called Laughing Matters Next Gen, which was a production by a woman named Andrea Meyerson. And
Mhm.
this happened because of Dalila, who is one of my dearest friends that we've known each other since Spelman. And I had just started doing stand-up and she knew Andrea and she said, I think you should put my best friend in your movie. You know how Dalila is just one
Yeah.
of those people. She's the person that you want on your side to advocate for you because she's pushy, she's nudgy,
Yeah.
and she's always right.
Yeah.
So she
Yeah.
was there and Andrea was like, well, who is this friend? I don't know this name. She's like, well, she's great and you should do it. So Andrea came out to New York, didn't see me perform, just
Mhm.
met with me. And she was like, well, I like you. I think I'm going to put you in my movie. I was like, oh, oh, okay. And I did that. I came out to LA and I filmed that. And I was under a lot of stress, but it was one of those situations where I said to myself, you have to show up for yourself.
Yeah.
You absolutely, there's drama here, exes, all kind of stuff is happening. But if you do not show up for yourself in this situation, you are going to regret it. So find a way to just like stick your courage to the sticking place and make it happen. And that happened. And then after that, about every 2 years after that, I would get other things like the logo special and then the Showtime special and the Wanda Sykes presents Herlarious, which was a crazy, crazy honor to be a
Yeah.
part of. And yeah, so
Awesome.
that's kind of that. And now stand up is what landed me in my current job as a writer on a sitcom.
Before you get to that, and I'm going to turn the whole shebang bang over to you,
Mhm.
to teach us a thing. How are you faring during the pandemic? How are you?
So I'm up and down. I think for the first week, I think I was just in such shock because we were still filming, um, and I was still going to work. Like March 12th, I was at work. March 13th, I was still at work. We were doing rewrites on a script and went to rehearsal, came back, and then got a text and it was like, we are going to wrap season 1 because it's just they didn't want to put people's lives in danger and didn't want people to have to worry about, because when you're there and you're working in that studio on that stage, there's 100 something people there and
It's like a
we're
little baby petri dish.
exactly.
Yeah.
And so they just called it and we were 2 shows short of the season, and by 3:45 I was out the door and I was back at my house at 4 o'clock, like, okay, so we wrapped season 1 and that
Wow.
was that. So I spent the first week just kind of just confused, just not knowing quite what to do with myself. Because I knew I was coming on my way to a hiatus, because 2 weeks after that, we would have been on hiatus. But
Mhm.
it happened 2 weeks early, and I just spent a lot of time cleaning and tidying and organizing and trying to find some kind of control and structure in the situation. And then when they said LA was going to be in lockdown, I moved into my girlfriend's house and keep my apartment there, but just wanted to be someplace where we were around each other and wouldn't have to like navigate, like trying to figure out like, whatever
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
lockdown is. So yeah, so it's just been a lot of up and down. And I think I finally gotten myself to a place where I can go back to art or dive into that as instead of the elements and the
Yeah.
other things that are going on.
Yeah.
But it took me some time to get to that place. I feel like now, like yesterday I was writing on a script and I was like, "Ugh, feels good to be immersed in this world and
Yeah.
not in the other stuff."
Sure. I think maybe there are a lot of people, as perhaps the cabin fever part of all of this is starting to kind of settle a little bit, because I think, we've kind of all sorted this out in cycles. Like at first
Mhm,
it's like, okay, I don't know what's going on. It's kind of
mhm,
uncertain, but there was still some distance with
mhm,
the virus. And so it kind of felt like an extension of spring break or a few extra
mhm,
days off. Then stuff started getting real when your Twitter feed or your Facebook feed or your text messages were starting to fill up with, well, this person is tested positive, or it's starting to grow closer and closer to home.
mhm,
And then the walls start to come in a touch.
mhm.
Now I feel like, and you're not the first person to say this. Red Summer was on earlier today, and I think she might
I
pop in a
know
little bit
her.
later. And
Uh-huh,
then, yeah, and then of course we're going to talk to Dalila right after
uh-huh,
this. Um, but that what's starting to happen now is people are saying, no, you know what, I'm kind of settling into this, and I've got some writing to catch up on, or there are a few books that I've been meaning to read. For me,
mhm,
it's trying to catch up on my reading for the program that I'm in.
mhm,
um but Darnell Walker, he was on Tuesday. He's writing for Sesame Street and Blue's Clues. He
mhm.
goes, I'm I'm writing more. And it's funny for a person who has a writing job to say, I'm finally writing, meaning he's able to get back to his stuff. So,
Yeah.
I really hope this ends soon, but at the same time, it's like, you got to find your jewels where you can at this point. And um, yeah, I'm glad you're safe and someplace comfortable to ride this out. All right, my friend, I'm going to mute my mic
Okay.
and turn it fully over.
Okay. So y'all can hear me, right? Okay, great. I want to share with you a quote. Um, and I want you to think about whether or not you think this is true. And if so, why? And then I'll share who said it at the end. But just like listen to it and think about, why would this person feel this way? Why do they feel this way? What's the why behind it? And do you think it's true? And how can you use this as a filter for yourself? Okay. So here's the quote. That's not, I'm just waiting for it to pull up on my computer. Okay. This is the quote. Being a Black woman writer is not a shallow place, but a rich place to write from. It doesn't limit my imagination, it expands it. It's richer than being a white male writer because I know more and I've experienced more. Now, what do you think about that?
Do we like raise our hands?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, I'll go first. So, at the
Tell me who you are. Tell me your name, so because I might not be able to see you.
okay, hi, my name is Amarachi Ade.
Okay.
I'm a senior now, technically. But that quote to me just means that when you experience more, when you go through more, and when you have a different scope at life, you can write more and tap into more feelings. I feel like Black women have struggled in so many ways. Black people in general, but Black women specifically. So I feel like when you have those struggles, you can turn them into art. And I feel like any pain or any tragedy you have, it can be turned into art. So that's what that quote means to me.
Okay. Anyone else?
Me, Juwan Jennings. I really liked. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
That line where it was like, I'm more richer than a white man. I feel like we as we've seen as an industry and growing up, we've seen a lot of their stories versus our stories. Like, we don't have enough stories that are told right, or like, even if it's very narrow and it's from somebody else's point of view rather than Black women's point of view. So I like that line.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else have any thoughts on it?
My name is Michaela Davis Curry. I'm a sophomore and I'm a mass communications major and a sociology minor. Mm-hmm. But my thoughts on that quote is, you have to have the good and the bad. You have to have, us as a people, we have the good and the bad of being Black. We know the struggles of being Black, and because their struggles are so mainstream and our struggles are not mainstream as much, we have more experiences that they probably will never understand, which gives us way more things to write out. We can write from their perspective and a whole nother perspective that most people can't write from. So that gives us a large plethora of experiences that they don't necessarily have because they live in a mainstream world.
Anyone else? So going off of what you just said, that's how I see that quote as well. Just the idea that we have our own experiences, but because we, in our country, in the United States that we live in right now, we are a part of their world as well. And so we take in all of their culture. So we know it, we hear it. It's, we know what their cadence and their tones and the things that we know all that stuff. And then we also have our own. It's that kind of double consciousness, and how that, to me, works in our favor as a writer. Do you see what I mean? Because we have so many different wells that we can draw from. So, sometimes when you're in a writer's room, and a lot of writers' room, I mean, it's getting better now, but, for a long time, they were just like a lot of white guys, so many white guys, and now as they are becoming more diverse, it's interesting to me to see how we can influence those rooms. And I think one of the things that I remind myself of is that quote. In that quote, does anyone have any guesses about like what kind of wonderful Black arrogance is it that came up with that quote? Who said that? Anybody have any ideas who that is? Let me read it to you.
I want to go with Issa Rae.
Ooh, Issa, I could see her having this point of view. I'm going to read it to you one more time. Being a Black woman writer is not a shallow place, but a rich place to write from. It doesn't limit my imagination, it expands it. It's richer than being a white male writer because I know more and I've experienced more. Who would be saying that stuff?
Okay, I have a guess.
Okay.
Toni Morrison?
It is. It's Toni Morrison. Right? And so like so I like to take my advice from her, right? So and one of the things that I found, like this was my first time in a writer's room, starting off as a staff writer. And in a lot of places, those staff writers are people who are seen and not heard, right? That's a lot of like what being a staff writer is. But in this particular room, it's actually not this way, which is really interesting. On the show, we have, the show is Bob Abishola. It's on CBS. It's a Chuck Lorre production. So we have we have 4 white men. One of them is Chuck Lorre, and he's the creator, and the other one is a showrunner named Al. And then we have 3 Black women in that room. which is super unusual on like this kind of network show, right? And then we have 2 other white women. So we actually have 5 women in the room and 4 men. Very unusual. And one of the creators is a Black woman, a woman who's Nigerian and British, and a Black woman. So we have like to be able to have that many different voices in that room is really interesting. And also, we all still have a different point of view, which I think is something that I find most valuable as a comic and also as a writer. So one of the things that I want to encourage you to think about is like, what is your point of view? What makes you different from someone else? Because someone could say, look, they're all Black women, right? There are 3 Black women in the room, but we don't see everything the same. We all have our own unique point of view, and that's based on our experiences. And that is what's valuable, you know? So I want you to think about like, what is it that you bring? So yes, I bring my Blackness to the room. I bring my queerness to a room. I bring that I'm a woman, but I also bring like growing up in Pittsburgh, close to the Midwest. I bring going to graduate school in the Midwest. I bring to like my kind of like uptight personality, type A way, you know, all of these things that are who I am help me to be in that room and help me to give different points of views for different characters. So I want you to think about something, a story or something that you think about yourself that you feel like it's something that you probably like don't, you know, talk about a lot, or but it's something that makes you unique. I want you to think about that. Take a minute and think about that. And not, I don't want it to be like our race, right? Because a lot of us have that in common. I don't want it to be our sexuality, okay? And I don't want it to be our gender. Something else in your experience that gives you a unique point of view. Okay, so give me like a little, if you feel like you have something. You feel like you have something? Juan, I see your face. Do you have something?
I do, but I just need to materialize it and organize and get it together.
Right. Yeah. And so because we're not, you know, going to be on here forever, we're not going to necessarily share all of these things. If we were in a longer class, I would say like share that, because I have a friend who went to a meeting with different showrunners, and one of the things that the showrunner said is like, tell me something about yourself that, you know, you haven't told a lot of people that is that's different than maybe the person next to you. Because that thing that's different helps to inform you, and it will help to inform other characters, and it helps to inform your point of view, and it helps to inform stories. Do you see what I mean? All of those little things. Like, so even though there are 3 Black women in this room, I have like, one of my things is like, I have like a relationship with my mom where I feel like, you know, my brother's the favorite. I feel like he's the favorite. So that's part of who I am and what I bring to a character. So if there's a character like Christina on my show who feels like she's the underdog and that her family doesn't see how great she is and you know, all these things, I help to bring that to the show. Do you see what I mean? So all of those things that you are a part of your voice and who you bring to and who shows up in the room and helps to create character and stories. Yeah. Yeah.
It is awesome. Yeah. Yeah. I want to go ahead and open it up to the students even more. I think this is a great opportunity to turn things around and get them to present you with some questions now.
Okay.
Why don't you guys go ahead and open up your mics and ask Miss Glow what's on your mind?
Wanna go first?
Mhm.
Okay. You said something earlier about how you were talking about your journey and how you went from acting to directing to comedy. And one of the things I struggle with is knowing exactly what I want to do.
Mhm.
And or me wanting to do a whole lot of different things, but trying to choose which one I'm going to start with.
Yeah.
And when you said that you had the passion for directing, but you went for acting, how did you make that transition? What were like the hurdles that you ran into? Because although you're an actor, how did you get in the door to be a director? Since people are like, okay, you went for acting, how are you going to transition over to directing now? And how did people trust you enough to allow you to do that?
And one of the things that I can say about being a part of all of those different things, I really and truly believe that they have all made me a better artist. I promise you. I promise you that showing up in that room, in a writer's room, never having been a writer's assistant, never having been in a writer's room before, my experience as an actor and as a director made it possible for me to know what's going on in there. Because as an actor, I love characters. I love finding idiosyncrasies and figuring out all of those different layers of a character, right? As a director, I know kind of like a bigger picture, what's possible. I know story, right? As a director, I feel like I know story. So whereas I had like a little time in all of those different kind of like pools, I think that all of those pools led me to where I am now and give me a skill set that, you know, if I just been a writer, I may not have known. Like I know what dialogue sounds like in my mouth. And I know what can, you know, like I know how words go together as an actor, because even as a writer, I'll say them out loud because I know that like they have to be spoken. So as far as figuring out, you know, what the thing is, I'm like I feel like go with what feels good. At the time, acting did not feel good to me. I did not like being on cattle calls. I did not like the way that I felt. Directing felt good. You know what I mean? It felt empowering, and that's what I needed at the time. So you will do the thing that makes you feel good. And even as a comic, I love stand up. I felt like I was like, God, it's a little bit lonely. I was like, I feel like a little lonely. I miss other people. I miss collaborating, right? Because that was the theater me that loved to collaborate. That was the actor and the director that loved to collaborate. I started to miss it. And so I was like starting to think like, well, I'd like to have a job where like I get to be funny and I get to laugh and I get to work with other people. That would be nice. I would really like, I feel like I would like to work with other people some. And that's how this happened. So go with what, you know, is feeling right and know that that can change.
Yeah. Who else? Who else? Jump on in there.
I have a question.
I have a question. Oh, okay.
You can go first.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Okay. Hi, my name is Amarachi Ade. I think we've met before. Okay. So my question is, have you ever been the only Black person in the room? And how does it feel to be in that position, to be the only Black person or the only Black woman in the room?
So in the writing room, I'm not that, but I spent the majority of the beginning of my life as the only Black person in the room. And so I try not to be anymore. But, you know, there have been some times when we're in like smaller writing groups, you know, sometimes the room will break up a little bit and I may be like the only Black person in that room. But I think in the spaces where I feel like I trust the other people or I have allies in the room, then I feel like okay with that. And as long as I don't become like the expert, you know, the expert Black, I don't think that's like something I aspire to.
Ooh,
Thank you.
That's a heavy task.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead,
Yeah.
Gerald. What's on your mind, son?
Okay. Hi. Oh, thank you. Hi, my name is Gerald May. I'm a junior English major with minor in communications with aspirations to be a working screenwriter. Now, whenever I write, I'm more used to like doing like drama and dealing with like internal conflict, and like I'm interested in doing comedy, but I always think about it and I'm like, if I write something, like it's not gonna be funny. So I'm just curious to like, how do you go about to like writing comedy, and do you think being a stand-up comedian has an impact as to whether you can write good comedy or not?
So I do think stand-up has been helpful. I think the way that stand-up has been most helpful in writing is it's a timing thing, you know, because I think jokes have timing to them. They have a rhythm to them. And I think musicians often hear it in stand-up and in writing, and stand-ups also in writing can hear the rhythm of a joke. So um, and then I guess, and the other thing about comedy is that it's very subjective, right? You know, different people find different things funny. So it's about like finding your voice in the comedy. Like, what do you find funny? Because often what you find funny is the kind of thing that you will write that will be funny. You know what I mean? Like, so like I am not a big like bathroom humor kind of person. I don't really like find that super funny. That's not the kind of stand up I do. You know what I mean? Like I find things that are funny that are more character driven, not just broad strokes, more about like the people and the idiosyncrasies of people and how those things move up against each other and bump around and stuff.
Okay.
And I
Thank
will
you.
say for comedy, as much as you can, read it out loud.
Okay.
Well, this actually is a great place to well, first of all, to start to bring things to an end, unfortunately. But I think Gerald's question leads to a great opportunity to communicate that these young people are at the stage in their career where you know, certainly they're learning a lot of these skill sets, right? They're learning directing, and they're learning about screenwriting and story arcs, and how to find the comedy in a dramatic world, those sorts of things. I've created a way for the students to connect with all of the guest lecturers in a mentor type capacity. If you all have the time available, I'm going to do a screen share here and just share the PVAMU TV website that will allow the speakers to get to know the students a little bit. I don't know if you can see
Oh,
my
now I do.
mouse.
Uh-huh.
Does it? It's the website. Yeah. Okay, good.
Yep.
And on this website, or the pvamutv.org website, I want to thank Ronald Savage Jr. for taking the time the last couple of days to put this together.
Good.
Everyone will be able to see all the talks that we've had, that we have in the series. There you are, Glow. Boop, boop.
Mm-hmm.
And what also is available is a page for the students to, as they love to say, shoot their shot.
Yeah.
And this is an opportunity for all the speakers to identify or come back to some of the students that asked questions, that engaged, and some of the students who are probably a little bit shyer in nature. If you click on their picture, like I did by accident just now, it will take you to one URL of their choice. In Jordan's case, because he's an aspiring cinematographer and director, he's taking you to his portfolio, his visual portfolio. Gerald here, I think his takes you to his LinkedIn page, maybe. Gerald,
Yes.
is that
Yes,
where it
ma'am.
goes if I click it?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So I've instructed them to use their LinkedIn page if they have it, and that will give them a professional platform to be able to share who they are and what they do, and invite all of you as mentors to visit their page and you know, see if there's someone that could be mentored by you in some way, form, or fashion. And I think given this time where um, you know, if, for instance, using Gerald as an example, if there's a one-page something he could send to you or put on his LinkedIn where you can access, that's the sort of maybe opportunity, we'd love to have happen, time permitted. That's it. So that's their opportunity to quote unquote shoot their shot. And
that's a really great thing to have. What a great tool. And I noticed so many of you all said that like you had a marketing minor and all of those things. And I'm just like, so smart, because now is such a great time to be able, it's all about marketing, being able to market yourself and knowing how to get your voice and your thoughts and your creativity out there. So yeah, it's a great idea.
Absolutely. Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the
Absolutely.
wisdom that you gave us today. I do hope you're actually able to come back and play with us a little bit in about an hour or half hour. What time does Dalila comes on at 4? And again, with you and all of our speakers, we're just growing and really more than just saving a semester. I think these young people are benefiting in ways that that we hadn't anticipated, we hadn't expected.
Right.
And I'm just so thankful and appreciative. Any final things you'd like to share with us, ways that the students can stay connected to you, or things you want to share with us we should be looking for? Watch the show, Bob Hart's Abishola, all of that. Tell us what you got.
Yeah, so tune in on Mondays on CBS, watch Bob Hart's Abishola. You can also find me on Instagram, just Glow Bigelow. And I'm just really impressed with you all and just really excited to know that there are folks of color coming up ready to do their things. So, and you have such a great teacher. So I'm excited. I'm excited for you.
Oh, thank you, sister. All right, y'all. That's going to do it for this particular segment. You would think as a film and TV professor, I would, and someone who's done this a few times, I'd be better at like opening and closing this thing. But I'm just like,
we're done.
But yeah, all right, come back at 4 o'clock and let's hang out with Dalila at 4. And again, you can see all of these in replay on YouTube. Get the nuggets that you missed if you were here live, come back and see it again. But yeah, just come back. All right, bye.
Bye.